Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast for August 1st, 2018. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer here at Alpha. Also joining us is Sarah Mitchell, who is in charge of our documentation department. Now today, Dion is going to be talking more about API application interfaces in Alpha Anywhere, but he is also here to answer your questions, and so is Sarah for that matter. So are all of us. So go ahead and type any questions you may have about Alpha Anywhere into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. All right, let's get started. Dion, I'm going to first take you off mute. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks very much. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Great. And just heads up, my network connection's been a little flaky, so if I'm getting dropouts, let me know and I can switch to an alternative network setup. So
we will let you know, thanks. And I can see your screen now.
Okay. Are you able to hear me okay? I think we might have finally gotten there. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Well, welcome. I'm going to dive right in since we lost a few minutes there. First, great job by the team last week helping me out getting started on the API. We're going to cover a few of those slides, but really I want to do some introduction, some very valuable tools that I use when I do API work. And I also want to dive into some of the initial concepts so we can start talking about those. And then next week, we have a very exciting demonstration where we'll actually show a third-party product integrated with Alpha Anywhere, doing some very powerful integrations from a business intelligence. I think people are really going to enjoy that. It's going to be a lot of really neat content, and we've got that all lined up for next week. With that said, first and foremost, just want to remember we're almost through all the way of summer. My gosh, we've started August today. Today is the first day of August. So I'd like everybody to make sure they've gotten their Alpha DevCon tickets. That's coming up August, September, October, literally little over 2 months from now. And we're actually running out of space. And so we want you to grab that space when you have it available. We're very excited about this year's event, and it's going to have an amazing number of great demonstrations, a lot of information, and excellent presentations by our developers and content that you're going to be able to participate in. So you can go to alphasoftware.com. And if you go to the main menu, and I think it's on services, actually it's DevCon 2018. So alphasoftware.com/DevCon 2018, you're going to be able to sign up there. You can review the agenda, check out the venue. We look forward to seeing everybody there. So very, very excited from there. Dave, just a real quick process check. Audio, video coming through okay?
Yes, they are now. There was a little blip with the video, but it looks like if you're still looking at the announcing Alpha DevCon screen, we're both on the same page.
Okay. I might be going a little, I'll have to go a little slower because I think my network connection is not participating. So year of the API, and in fact, a lot of what we're going to be talking about the API will be front and center at the developers conference. So that's why it's going to reinforce what we're talking about this year, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. I did want to mention also that Dave had a very fascinating and interesting Transform Tuesday yesterday, and in fact showed an amazing capability. Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot. Could you just spend 1 or 2 minutes explaining, because really the underlying was it was using the Alpha API. So this is an example of what APIs enable. So if you don't mind, just a minute or two describing what that did.
Sure. So cool. Well, in yesterday's Transform Tuesday, I showed a couple of examples of using the Transform API with Zapier. And what was really neat about that is it's a non-programming system. Everything is no code, both Alpha Transform and also Zapier. So yeah, of course that has limits and stuff, but it turns out you could do an awful lot with no coding. So in yesterday's example, I showed it creating a Google spreadsheet, a Google Docs spreadsheet, and typing in information about a service call. So I put in my name and address, and I indicated that the router was broken or things like that. I just sort of filled out a sheet. And using the API and Zapier, it was able to pull that right into Transform and display it right on my phone. So what I entered basically into a spreadsheet appeared on my phone. But we then took it a little further and showed how we could automatically generate, let's say, weekly reminders to do inspections and have it generate service tickets in Transform. Again, that was also all Zapier based, Zapier and the Transform API. And it was cool, very, very easy to follow. So if you'd like me to get you a link to that, just send an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. If you would like to be invited to Transform Tuesday, also send an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com, and we will get you right up on the list. So thanks very much, Dan, for letting me speak.
Yeah, I watched the video. I was just blown away. It was so cool. And really, it's the essence of an API. And that's why we really want to focus on this, is that as you know, Alpha Transform has a built-in API to allow you to integrate it with other systems. And I kind of, I'm going to call it loosely coupled, but you could create some pretty tightly coupled integrations. But the reason I say loosely coupled is the fact that you're not doing deep integration, meaning, for instance, in that situation, Google Sheets, Alpha Transform wasn't going into Google Sheets and looking up the underlying database where Google adds everything. No, they went through the API. So this API concept is hugely important and hugely powerful to allow you to create an environment that makes it easy to connect these systems together. So today I'm going to focus a little bit more about consuming APIs, show some of the tools that I use during that process, and some of the example APIs out there so you can kind of get your feet wet without building it. But a real key capability, and we're really going to start introducing it next week, is the ability for Alpha not only to consume APIs, but also to provide APIs or publish APIs. And that will allow you to do essentially the very powerful ways you could basically take your system, publish an API, and then people could create these integrations in a secure way with your system to do things as powerful as Dave just mentioned in terms of that. So, the two key things that Alpha Anywhere is going to enable is consuming and publishing web APIs. And consuming is powerful. I can use an API to consume Dropbox or a mail provider or Google or Google Docs or something like that. But also we're going to be showing next week more about the publishing aspect and kind of a mix between there. So today I want to talk a little bit more about that consume aspect of it. The fact that we have the ability to easily, with the tools built into Alpha, make it easy to consume web APIs. And in fact, what's really cool, and I'll show you, is that we have some pre-built integrations already in the system, specifically around Salesforce. So if you are integrating with Salesforce.com, we already have the ability to connect to the Salesforce.com right out of the box. And there'll be more of those coming down the road as we identify these very critical, very sort of industry-leading solutions. We're going to help accelerate people integrating with those. But more importantly, you're going to be able to roll your own, either wrap your own to one that we haven't identified, or better yet is work with a third party that already has that integration that goes with it. And we'll have some special guests. So the first thing I want to talk about is when you're using APIs, there are a number of different tools that I want you to be familiar with, because Alpha allows you to go in and say, take a curl command and turn it into Xbasic and consume that, do some other stuff. But often you kind of want to start at a higher level, meaning you want to play with an API at a high level with sort of a test interface and not necessarily have to be in the weeds right out of the gate. So I use a number of different tools to help me do that. So I'm jumping over and you'll see the screen switch a couple times. And then you should see in a moment where you'll see first is I'm on a website called reqres.in, REQRES.in. Now this isn't necessarily, well, actually it is a tool, but this is
still updating. Okay, here we are now. Now we're at Reqres.in.
Good, so good. I've got about a 5-second delay in terms of what's going on. Good, thank you for letting me know. Actually, my screen said it was right updated, but I'm sure it's like a little low. So this is called reqres.in, and the way reqres.in does is it's basically fake API, meaning that they have created and published this fake API that will allow you to exercise it, to call it. And you don't have to sign up for an account. You can just use it right away out of the gate and explore it. It's got a very nice user interface. It's very easy to use. And what's cool is that they have fake data. So you can start kind of learning the concepts of interacting with a web API, but not worrying about going and setting up a third-party agreement with another company or something like that. So I highly recommend checking it out. It's called Reqres.in. And again, as you can see that it basically has a bunch of fake data, is a fake API, and you can call it and it works. It just works right out of the gate. And it has all the different types of web API interactions you're going to do. As we dive into it, you're going to find that RESTful interfaces, i.e. using the REST protocol, you have different kind of responses using like a GET, a POST, PUT, DELETE, PATCH. There's a number of different ones that are part of the underlying specification. And Reqres.in supports all those, so you can exercise them and learn how to use them. And that's really what I see this more than anything else, is a learning tool, a facility for you to be able to play. You're not going to break anything. They've set it up purposely for this, and it's able to do it, and it's up and running all the time. And I'm going to scroll down right here, and I'm going to show you in a moment. You'll see it will scroll down to all the different kind of API requests that you can make. And again, they really haven't added a lot of security in this just because they want to make it simple. And that's a good thing. Start with an open API like this, for instance. And then once you kind of get comfortable with that, you can start integrating the security elements. And integrating the security is not hard. There's basically a simple way to do it and then some more complex. And you can kind of take a step-by-step approach. And that's one of the key things is, if you realize what's going on here is, and I apologize for the people who are more experienced, who've been doing this for a while, you have two learning curves. You have learning curve number one is understanding web APIs, how they work, what are the protocols, how does security get handled. So there's somewhat of that. And then there's the how does alpha do things with web APIs. And you kind of mix and match the two at the same time. But what I want to encourage you on is this is a great way to get started, just to play, to not, to explore and not be under stress of having to deliver something, to be able to play with it. So as you can see, they have exposed a number of different API calls. So a simple one such as list users or get a single user. Here's a call where a single user is not found. So you can start exploring like, well, what happens if I do an API call and I don't get back what I want, etc. And they have a whole bunch of other ones, including creating content in the back end, updating that content, deleting that content, etc. And again, you're not going to break their system. They refresh it all the time, so you're good to set. And then they also allow you to successfully explore of the security elements of like registering and logging in, etc. So you'll see that these are the different sample APIs here on the left-hand side. Here's what the requests look. You'll notice that it's only this part, because the request is a combination of the URL for this website, which is https://reqres.in, and then you have the request itself is this part right here. So you'll notice that it's a combination of this and this, and I'll demonstrate that in the next few minutes there. So I'm going to click here on single user, and I'm going to give it a moment to show you how that works. And you'll notice that when it updates, that the request now looks different. It says /API/users and then / a number. And that number in this case is the number 2, which is the unique ID of a record in their backend system, their database or whatever it happens to be. So this is giving you an example of how to do that. Now, this is kind of just giving you examples, but if you want to start exploring it and playing with it yourself, you could immediately take this and go into alpha and start doing stuff, but I have a better way to approach that, to kind of just get a feel for web APIs. It involves our next applications that are available. The first one, and there's 2 of them that I want to explain. The one I use more is called Restlet, but I'm going to talk about. But there's third-party products out there that are free. They do have paid plans for if you're starting to share things as a team and do more sophisticated things, but they have free accounts. One which is very widely known, and I'm sure a number of people have used them, is called Postman, and it's getpostman.com. And again, you can download this app. It plugs into Google Chrome, and basically think of it as like a user interface to put in your web APIs and exercise and play with them and experiment with them. And I found when I started doing my initial work on APIs, it was much easier for me to go in and play with this, kind of figure out how the API works, make sure it's working, getting the responses I want. Then I could quickly jump into alpha, and then alpha could then do the other. And I'm going to show you a real cool design pattern in a few minutes on how these tools make your life even easier, along with some built-in functionality for alpha. So one is called Postman. I've used that extensively. It's a good tool. The other one that I'm using more and more lately, which again is up to you, is called Restlet. Restlet.com. And I just kind of like the interface of Restlet.com a little bit better. And again, this is really your personal choice. So you can download both of them, play with them, but there. And you'll see what's really cool is that these tools, they really have this simple, I want to just exercise an API tool capability, but they also have some very powerful other solutions in there. For one, they have a whole studio where online you can design a web API. And we're going to cover that down the road in more detail in one of our future sessions when we start talking about how you can design your own web APIs. And what's really cool is Alpha actually, to a large degree, will automate some of this documentation for you. Really well thought out. Very cool there. But you can also set up like test suites. So let's say you built and these are some of the cool things. They kind of get you in with the free, but they offer some very powerful capabilities. So for instance, and I'm not going to go into detail, is let's say you've built an API around your system. And I'm going to show you that next week. I'm going to go do a demonstration. Then I'm going to show you how I consume it in a third-party system. And then you're going to see how I get this chocolate and peanut butter capability there. But let's say you end up building APIs. You're going to have a bunch of different APIs. And those APIs are going to have to be built, tested, and then maintained over time and tested and validated, because no system is static, it's living and breathing. Well, some of these have some really cool test and automation tools where what you can do is set up like a test suite against your APIs. And then you can run those where it'll do a whole bunch of API transactions and compare the results back and say, did it pass, did it fail, etc. So this really creates a very neat way for you to test your APIs and do it in an automated fashion where you build a whole bunch of calls, save them, and hit them over time. So check them out. Both Postman and Restlet have these kind of capabilities. There's also some other really good tools from I think it's SoapUI and Swagger, the Swagger company. It's a really blossoming area because more and more people are doing with web APIs. So I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to go into, this is the Restlet client, and this is for free. And you're going to see in here, let's see, I don't have any there. I've got one here I was playing. This is for next week where I'm showing how I can call my own demo system and get a customer list. It's very fun, very exciting, and you're going to enjoy it next week. But this is their interface. Now, what's cool is this, one thing I do like about this a lot is it actually runs inside of Chrome. So it's a Chrome plugin, and you can either use it for free or sign up for an account, and you can save sort of sets of API calls and things like that. So I really like that because then I kind of just, I'm in Chrome, I can go play with it in the user interface. I can go right here and I don't have to install separate software on my machine or do anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show an example. So I'm going to go back to my Reqres, go to my get list users. So I'll wait a minute to make sure we're caught up there. And what I want to do is I want to actually exercise and play with this. And I want to do two things. I want to play with it in Restlet just to kind of get a feel for how it works and play with some different parameters. Then what I'd also like to do is actually create a little piece of code in Alpha that will run this same API and do the same thing inside of Alpha. I mean, Alpha will call and collect that. So first step is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, oh, okay, it's HTTPS Reqres in, and then this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this out here. I've copied that address here. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go ahead and add a new request here. And I'll go save and continue. And I'm going to call this Reqres list customers or list customers. Okay. Okay, so you'll notice I created a new thing. And what's nice is I can save these. So over time, I don't have to come back and reset anything up. It kind of has a library of these things once I get them set up. So you'll notice right now that we're here on the right-hand side. And again, Dave, if you don't mind, if I tend to go a little too fast for the screen update, let me know. I want to make sure we don't lose anybody and I'm not talking about stuff you don't see.
Will do.
Okay, thank you, sir. So you'll see that a API call consists of two primary things. One is a method, and the second is called the scheme, which is the actual sort of, call it a URL, really, which is what it is, because instead of putting this into a web browser, you can write it and use it within Alpha, etc. So if I come over here and look at here, my URL is going to be a combination of the reqres.in and this request right here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm keeping in mind that Reqres. I'm going to go back into here and I'm going to type Reqres res.in/API-users, okay? So you'll see I basically just combine those two things to create that full URL that goes to that resource. And now I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I save it here. And now I'm going to click this send button. And what it's going to do is Reqres is going to take this URL and do a GET transaction against that system. And then it's going to return the information. So let's go ahead and do this real quick. And I'm going to click here, send. So you'll see that it's sending the request. And in a moment, it then comes back with a response. So basically, Reqres did it on their server. They basically wrapped this up, made that call, and gave me the response. So the first thing you're going to see right here is up top here is a response called 200. So you'll learn as we get into this that you have different responses from the server, and they're different categories. There's 200, 300, 400, etc. And each of those responses mean a different thing. I happen to know that response 200 means success. No problems there. But if there was a problem, and we'll show it to you in a moment, it will give us a different kind of response, which may be like a 400. And that's how you tell whether your API call was successful or not. Now, this is, again, why I like to use this interface, because I can go in here and say, okay, I'm going to just screw this up real quick and just say, hey, what happens if I put in a screwed up page and send it? You'll see, oh, it did. Let's do this. Let's do this here. Okay. In a moment, it did something different. Interesting. But I can screw up I can play with it, and I should have gotten a different response. Well, let's try this. Let's go like this. And I'm going to go ahead and click send. There we go. Okay. You'll see when I I changed the API call to get rid of the good part of it where I was actually calling it. And you'll notice that when I sent that to the server actually got it. It went to Reqres and got it received a request to it. But then it looked at that request and said, hey, sorry, Charlie, I can't do that. So it gave me a 404, which was, in this case, a resource not found. You'll see it sometimes when you're doing web pages and things like that. So this is the first thing I want to show you, is that one of the cool things is I can play with my API with just in this user interface here and make it work nicely. So I can go back here. I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to click send. And you're going to see in my case, after I send this, that now I got a good response. It's a 200 response. That means that everything went perfect. It gives me the information down below, the metadata about it. But you'll notice over right here, you see body. This is what came back from that request. So when I sent this request to reqres.in, this is what comes back. And you'll notice, I'm going to go back here, you'll see it looks like this, because this is what I should see from the server, which means I've asked for a user or users, and I get some metadata, and then I get the data. In this case, it was a set of users. In my situation here, it's a set of users. Oh, I use the user one where it's users, kind of from there. So you'll see it gave me my metadata, and then it gave me a series, and you'll notice it's nice. I can kind of explore it right here. A series of users that came back from the person, which includes the ID, the first name, the last name, and the avatar for each person in this data. So this immediately allows you, which is exciting, to kind of start exploring it and have fun, and you can save them and come back to them and exercise them. And also, when you're just getting used to doing it, you can actually see in a nice visual way, what is that data that came back from that server? So you can start understanding it. Oh, look, it's a JSON object. It consists of a JSON set of items here. And so you can get a feel for what it goes from there. And Postman's going to work a lot the same. So you can play either with Restlet or Postman and kind of decide which one's from there. And there's some other cool things you can do, is you can see what the hex is. You can see what the raw is. So you can see this is the raw data that came back to it. So this is just that's the content of that body. But then the printing makes it nice, so you can see, because mostly you're using JSON data, so you kind of want to see the structure of that JSON data. And it's often easier to see the structure here because it does all that printing than you writing a little code in Alpha to do that. Now that's Restlet, and that allows you to do that. And then you can explore and do all of these different things. You can do post, put, patch, delete transactions and play with them and see what they go. And so that's the first step. So often when I start a new project where I'm going to be working with a third-party API, the first thing I'll do is kind of play with that API in here and get an understanding of what are those key things I need to do. Then once I have a good feel for it, I know how to put this URL together. I know what method to use. I see what the body should come back. And you'll notice we can add headers, which is where your authorization. I'm not going to cover that today, but for APIs that have security, there's a basic one where you can add like a header record, and this will build that for you and make it easy for you to do it instead of you having to do a whole bunch of stuff there. So first step is to kind of play with it, get an understanding of what that API does, how it works, how it comes back, kind of explore that. Once I'm comfortable with that, then I'm ready to take it into alpha and start actually encapsulating that API inside alpha as code so I can exercise that. And that's what I'm going to show next. But before that, I want to just make sure process check, screen's coming through okay. Any immediate questions, Dave, that we may want to catch?
No, everything is coming through quickly. Well, I wouldn't say quickly, but the delay is manageable.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But we did have a couple questions, and one was whether or not you could use XML data with Restlet, or if it's just a JSON-based system.
I believe you can use both.
Okay.
It is a REST client, and REST tends to be JSON.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't done that. I have to check that out to see whether you could use XML or not. So you can just go to restlet.com, and they have full documentation right here, and you can search and you can see that. My guess is yes, because you still have a lot of old school XML data out there, but I haven't tried it myself. I've been mainly doing JSON from there.
Oh, okay. The other one is someone asked sort of for explanation again about Reqres. What was it, and sort of how would you use that maybe with the Alpha API, or could you?
Yeah. So Reqres is just a fake API, meaning that they have published a fake API. So the nice thing is you don't have to build an API to consume it. You can go here, no cost or anything like that, and they provide an API, and that API allow you. It's basically like a customer database or a user database, a directory, and they have all these sample ones that are able to do. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the training kind of initial development phase, learning about REST APIs, this is a really good resource because they've got it up and running. They manage it. You can just start consuming their APIs right out of the gate with no fees or anything like that. So it's really, I call it a training resource to be able to do that. Because when I started playing with web APIs, I was like, I would look at some of these APIs like Salesforce or something else, and they're very complicated because they're very big systems. And I wanted to find a very simple system that was free, that allowed me to kind of get my toes wet around APIs. And this turned out to be a great resource because it's simple. It's a very simple kind of request. Yeah. The data that comes back is very simple, but they explore. You allow you to update and create data. How would I update a record in a database using the API? How would I do that? And so you can kind of start simple and grow from there. So that's how I use Reqres.
So it almost reminds me of a sample database, but in API form.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like Northwinds.
It's like Northwinds, but instead of here are the file set with all the data, here's the API and here's how to get to it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. It's really that sample API that you can consume and use for your training purposes from there.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Excellent. Any other quick questions on that?
I think it's time to move on, but if there are other ones that we've missed, I'll make sure I hit you up during the next break.
Good, thank you. And again, I appreciate the questions. Those are very helpful for us. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go into Alpha, and I want to turn this into a little Xbasic script to be able to consume it, because I can use that in my scripts. I can call this API and get that data and be able to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and want to talk about a very powerful capability in Alpha. So Alpha now, we have two different ways. We're going to start today and talk about the curl genie. But we are also going to talk about some different ways you can use Swagger, etc., to create objects to consume it. And that's for our future there. There's sort of the quick and dirty, easy way to do it, which I'm going to show you today, and it's immediately available. It's been in there for a while, but it's much improved, much better than it was before. So I'm going to show you how you can create a little quick script to write that. And what's nice is I don't have to write the code. Someone else can do that for me, which is alpha. And then we're going to explore, as we get into the next few weeks, more sophisticated ways to create more more sophisticated ways to consume that API from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm in the alpha development environment. I'm going to go to the control panel here, and I'm in the control panel because I want to create a little Xbasic script that will call and get that data from there. And we're going to talk about later on the new, and this is part of our training program, more and more we're starting to REST enable or web service enable components. So for instance, the view box now, you can actually, one of the cool things about the new release is you can actually set up a view box, which we've shown before. And instead of connecting it to a list or to static data, you can actually now connect a view box directly to a REST service. And we'll show that in one of our future demonstrations, how I don't even have to write code. I can basically go in and create a user interface element and run from there. And in fact, we'll show that not next week, but the week after. It's really powerful, really cool. But today I want to show you how I can create a little Xbasic script that will call that service and get that data. And what's neat is I don't have to know anything about HTTP, lower level protocols, calling and return. We're going to do that for you. So I'm going to design a new script here. I'm going to create a new script. And for people who are new to alpha, we don't do a lot of scripting in alpha because a lot of it is point and click, but sometimes we do. So I'll go call REST service. Okay. Now I could go in the documentation, which is fantastic, and learn how to do this. Or I could say, hey, Alpha, can you do me a favor and write this for me? And often you want to ask that question always, is there a way for Alpha to do this for me? Because that's one of the core concepts about Alpha is that it does it for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm in here and I'm right-clicking in the white space, and I'm going down here to Genie. So in a few moments, you'll see a pop-up menu became aware. And then in the Genie, you'll see that I have some new little genies, or well, actually they've been around for a while, but genies on the right. So you'll see I have the curl command to Xbasic, which is I'm going to demonstrate today. The next one is called a web reference call, which I'll demonstrate in one of our future ones. The Xbasic SQL Actions code generation, which we haven't covered, but which is in the documentation, really cool. They'll actually write Xbasic code to call, to read, update, and do stuff in a SQL database. So you don't actually have to write that code. It's very powerful, very cool from there. And then also another one called the Stripe Genie, which is very neat, which it writes code for being able to call the Stripe payment processing. In fact, we have a couple projects we're using on our Stripe, and it's really easy. And we've set up this big Stripe Genie that allows you to automate all these really cool things you can do with Stripe. Like for instance, run a credit card against Stripe, issue a refund through Stripe, get a latest information, store a credit card in Stripe in a secure way. So there's some really cool stuff you can do there. So I encourage you to check those out. But today we're going to use what's called the curl command Xbasic. Now, a little bit of background, and I've talked about this before, but for people who are new, curl is a industry standard command line tool that allows you to issue a HTTP string and get the response back. So actually we include it in alpha. It's a little program that sits inside the alpha development environment. It's available both on the local machine, but also on the app server. So if you need to do it on the app server, there's some cool stuff there. But what this allows you to do is run a command. And so the issue is, well, geez, I don't know anything about curl. Well, we built in some example commands right here to show you, but I'm going to show you a real cool trick. So you don't even need to know curl. You'll get to know it over time because it's a very powerful tool. But let's go over here and check this out. And this is one of the reasons I also like to use these third-party tools to do stuff. So I'm going to go over here back into Reqres. Excuse me as I jump around. Where is that? Oh, wait, it's over here. Where is Reqres? Oh, sorry. It's going to blink a lot. I hope nobody has, it's not like a Nintendo and someone has a seizure while I'm doing this. I apologize if it does.
All right.
So you'll notice here,
okay.
Yeah, so here's my URL, and I go, oh, I got to turn that into a curl command. Well, one thing I like about Reqres is cool. It says save, but also check this out. there's a command in here called copy as curl. Whoa, I like that. That's cool. It's going to do the work for me. So I'm going to click copy as curl. So first I made sure this works, so I know it works. So now I'm going to go copy as curl, and you'll see that this is the curl command, curl-i-x get / blah, 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 blah. And they're like, great, okay, cool, whatever. Just give me that curl command here. This is a fairly simple one, but I'll come back and show you a little bit more complex one pretty soon. So I'm going to click copy here. So that is put it on my clipboard. So now I have that curl command. I'm going to go back into Alpha. I'm going to go right here to my curl command input area, and I'm going to click paste. And you'll notice that it pastes there. Now, what this, by the way, this little /, you'll get to know that, that's a line feed. So you'll notice in here that I'm on 2 lines. So it goes curl, that just says continue my command line on the second line. So actually when I'm in Alpha, I can get rid of that because this is all just 1 line that's in here from here. So I have curl-ix. So I really don't have to know that. I just kind of have to copy and paste it in here. But as you're going to see, curl can get, can do a lot of different things, and you'll see as you learn and use those tools. And it's one of those cool things is the more you use it, you'll start simple, but start to get a feel for it. So now that I've put my curl.
Just a quick question on that.
Yes,
if you left the / in, would it break it?
Let's try. That's a great. Let's break this. Let's be a test pilot here. I'm going to put it in there. My guess is it's going to ignore it because it's a standard line process. But hey, I could be wrong. So now I'm going to go here and I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, and I'm going to go generate Xbasic. So what Alpha does is actually calls, and it does some really cool stuff behind the scenes, and it creates this Xbasic here. So that's my Xbasic right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this Xbasic to my clipboard here. So I've used the curl, and so the answer is yes, it's going to ignore that when I'm using the Genie right here. I think it's smart enough to realize that, oh, someone might have pasted that in from a different component.
Okay, cool.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this code out right now, and I'm going to click OK. And I copied it, but I also click OK, and you'll notice that it inserted that code into my script. So I'm going to go ahead and save this script. I'm going to call it Reqres list customers, just so I can save this. Okay, I'm going to walk through this code just to show you, because it's very similar. You'll see over and over again how it is the same, and you'll see how you can take this core code and quickly turn it into a function to make it ideal. So let me go ahead and just hit run and run this code. So you'll see it does much stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and run this code. And then you notice you're going to see that it basically threw up a piece of information here that showed the header information, and it showed the body information here. And if I look at this and take a moment, look at this header information, I'm going to go to Reqres real quick and look at the header information here. So one thing we'll talk more about is that when you do an HTTP transaction, there's the header data, and then there's the body. And the header data contains a lot of information like metadata about the call, the discussion between the server and the client. So when we made a call to Reqres, we actually, in our case, there is a little header in there, but we could have added more header data. But in our case, we really just sent it, the query. But when it sent back this header data, and then it also sent back the body data. Now, what we're mainly interested in is the body data, but sometimes very important data is in that header data. So you'll notice that in my call back, it put up here, here's the header data, and here is the body data, and it's exactly what you saw before. So now I have an Xbasic function that Alpha wrote for me. As you notice, I didn't write any code. I just copied and pasted the URL from Reqres into Restlet and put it here. And again, after a while, if you get comfortable with curl, you can even skip that test and do that from there. So I want to show you, and I'm only going to spend a few more minutes on this, but just show you what this code is. And I highly, this webinar will be recorded, or is being recorded, and will be online. I highly suggest everybody taking 20 minutes out of their day and playing with this and try this, because once you get comfortable, you're going to see, oh man, I can do a lot of really cool stuff with this. So you'll see what happens is that Alpha has some built-in functions called curl, so we exercise and use curl. And again, this all works both on my local machine here and on the app server here. You'll see that it's setting what are called options. So for instance, the URL of our command. So doesn't that look really familiar there? Is the, we've got that HTTPS Reqres. And then there's these other pieces here, and these are kind of standard things, but over time you'll learn that we can change some of these things to change how it behaviors within it. But Alpha has sort of a default set of it. But then you'll notice here that on line 19, you'll see flag L, which is a Boolean. It does ce.execute. So basically it creates a CE, loads it with everything it wants to do, and then execute. And for people who are used to using Xbasic with a SQL connection string and calling the database, think of it as the CONN, where you set up a connection to the database, set up your parameters, and then you do an execute to call that, and then it returns the data. So the first thing it does is it says, hey, was this command successful? Did it call the server and was it successful? And if the answer is yes, which means flag is true, then basically what it does is it extracts out on line 24 the headers, it extracts out line 25 the footer or the content, and then it just shows that this show var just pops up a pop-up window that shows it. So basically this sets up the call, this executes the call, and if it's successful, it grabs the results of that call out there. If there was an error, then it would basically extract the error and show the error that's associated with that. And so I'm not going to go into much more detail on it, but I can show you that this is standard. You basically set up your call, make the call, and then get the results back. And if it's successful, you then manipulate it. Now we'll talk about virtues. Right now, that data is, for instance, this contents here is just a string contents. And what you can do, and we'll show that in a future one, is you can convert that into a pointer variable. So then you could iterate it through like an array and use other Xbasic. The other thing we're going to be able to do is take that content and directly feed a view box or a list or something else like that. And therefore that will allow you to grab that data and use it from there. But I'm not going to spend much more on time. I just kind of want to show you the concept here. Now you'll notice I can play with this. Now that it's in code, I can say, hey, you know what? Give me page 1. So what I'm doing is changing the parameter, that option of the URL from page 2 equals 2 to 1, and I can just press this, and there. Now I've got page 1, and I've got different data. It's got George as the first name. Bluth is the last name right here. And so this shows you that, oh, great, now I can make this parameters. So I could go something like this, and this last thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go dim page as in, and I'm going to go page is equal to 4. And down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. I'm going to say plus page. So now I'm parameterizing my call. And this is kind of a page, but down the road, you might be saying like the unique ID of a record in that database or something like that. So let's give this a try. Basically, I'm going to set this page as 4. It should combine it. And if that works correctly, then you'll see I'm on page 4, and you'll notice it's a different set of data here. So the cool thing about it is the hard stuff was done for you, how to set up these options, how to do it. And as I mentioned, when you have things like you have other headers for security and stuff, Alpha will take care of setting up all of that for you so you don't have to do that. But once you understand it, then you can use traditional kind of coding techniques to parameterize. And I could put this into a function. I could put it into a class library or a module library. So I could reuse this over and over. So I could say, call the function, pass in the page number, and then get back the results, and I would return maybe the content of what came back from there. So that's just general concept here. So I wanted to start out for this for 2 reasons. One, and I'm going to go back to it, is Reqres, a free resource for training purposes that you can use to kind of play and learn and educate yourself. There are 2 favorite tools I use. One is called Postman. I've used that a lot. It's a very powerful tool. It's really easy to use and it's fun and they're free. The other one, which I demonstrated today, which I tend to use more now, is called Restlet. I just like their interface a little better. I also like that copy as curl command. We actually demonstrated setting up and playing with a API, which I highly suggest do that first. That way you get an innate understanding of it. Then you can move into Alpha and create Xbasic and do the other things you want with it. Now, one powerful thing I showed you in here was that after you have this working, you can use the copy as curl command, which will convert this call from a standard just REST, a GET with, and turn that into a curl command. And once you have that curl command, we can copy that, go into Alpha, and use the Xbasic to curl. And I'll show you where that's at again. You just click in white space and anywhere you can write Xbasic and go down to Genie's curl command to Xbasic. Paste it in there, hit go, turns it into Xbasic, paste it in. Now you have it in code. You can have as much fun as possible. We're going to show you another demonstration. Once I have this running, I can open up a view box and actually call directly from that REST service right into that view box. So you can even skip the whole coding thing. And we're going to be moving that direction more and more. Alpha is really focused on making it super easy for you to create user interfaces that are built on top of REST services, but not have to do all the work that's associated with it. We're going to write a whole bunch of our own REST service integrations, like Salesforce is the first one, but we have other ones planned, which will even make your life easier. You can connect a grid right into Salesforce. Really crazy stuff you're going to see. It's real fun. But if you need to, and we don't support it, you can use this methodology to write your own kind of routines to connect to these third-party services here. So I'm going to cut it off for that today. I know I didn't leave a lot of question time there, but I want to get all that in. Next week, what we're going to do is we're going to take it up a notch. As Emerald would say, bam, we're going to take it up a notch. You're going to see next week, it's going to be so exciting. We're going to do the following. We're going to show you how you can use a third-party business intelligence tool to connect directly to Alpha Transform and show data in a dashboard inside of Transform without having to write a line of code. We're also going to show you, and this will be a pretty action-packed section, we're also going to show you the methodology for how you can write your own REST API and do the same thing where you can go into that third-party BI tool and actually consume your own REST service within Alpha. So you can write your own way of taking your Alpha data and moving it from there. And also I have a very special guest. They're friends of mine. They have a third-party BI tool that's really powerful, very cost-effective. I have a number of customers that are using it, and I want them to give you a little dog and pony show to show you how you can do some really cool stuff along with this. And it really dovetails into this whole, how do we take Transform Alpha, enable it through web APIs, and make your life as a developer easier, make your clients excited and happy, and I'm looking forward for that for next week. So with that, Dave, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any questions. And I know I took up a lot of time today, but I guess I was behind the curve and I needed to do some catch-up work.
Wow, a special guest next week. That sounds very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple questions, just having to deal in general with how Alpha Anywhere interacts with APIs. So the first one was just the general question is, how does Alpha call and receive responses in general? And you've shown one way, which is using curl and the curl Genie to create Xbasic. And I'm looking at your Xbasic. There's a curl.init or curl workspace. Certainly curl is probably a very popular way of doing it. Are there other ways in Alpha that we work with the APIs besides using curl?
Yes. If I go, and I apologize, it'll take a moment here, and I should have already had it up. If you go into the documentation, so we use curl as one method. Alpha actually has a full suite, I think it's HTTP fetch, of built-in functions that allow you to exercise and call. So Alpha, underneath the covers, where you don't see is there's a set of libraries that understand how to make calls to web services and come back. And there's a couple, there's the curl ones, but there's also the whole HTTP fetch capability, which are, these are actually, I'm sorry, this is HTTP fetch. Let's see, Xbasic fetch. There's actually, let's see.
It looks like there's one for client side as well. What I was just looking at.
That was client side. So this is that if you're doing this in JavaScript, but there's also an Xbasic set of commands. Let's go. Let me try. I'm sorry, I don't find that fetch. I know it's fetch. Here we go. There we go. There's a Xbasic command called HTTP fetch. And this allows you, and I'll scroll down here, it allows you to, in Xbasic, write your own little scripts. So we've got these automated methods using curl, but you could also use the HTTP fetch ones to also do that within the system. You may need to do a little more learning, and there's some sample code and other pieces out there from that standpoint there. But we more and more use the curl because curl is industrial strength. It's well known. What you're going to find is, let me give you an example of that. Let's go to Dropbox curl commands. Let's say someone gave me a challenge next week and says, okay, I want you to write an integration to Dropbox, which is going to be a little bit more complicated than, say, Reqres. That's why I suggest working with Reqres right here. What you're going to find is when you go to the API documentation for all of these, they often provide you with curl examples on how to run their API. So let me see if I can run this down here. And let's see if there's an example of that on this one. So you can see it tells you all the API, and my web is very slow. So let's see. That's documentation. Let me go back here. I'm looking on this is not, you would want to look on their documentation, but okay. So I'm looking here, and this is an example of a curl API call. So you can see they get a little bit more complicated, but basically you have the URL, you have your header data, or header information, and then the data you're providing to it. And I'm not going to go through detail, but what you're going to see is that most third-party APIs will provide you example curl commands. And what's great is you can copy those curl commands and paste them right into the Xbasic curl generator, and you're done. Boom, boom, boom. So that's why curl is something that I would definitely focus on, because you're going to find as you do a lot of research around web APIs, most people use curl to give you demonstrations of how to exercise their web API, because A, they know everybody can download for free the curl system and use it on their local machine. There are many third-party tools that support curl, like Reqres, or I'm sorry, like Restlet, and those pieces there. So I would definitely focus on mastering within Alpha the curl command capability, that curl to Xbasic and understanding, and you'll see these start looking the same over and over and over again. So for a while, in the future, you may just copy and paste and edit your Xbasic directly. But curl's the way to go, and it's what's neat is in the last release, the development team spent a lot of time enhancing and hardening our curl integration, so it actually handles even more complex interactions and more. It's better at dissecting curl commands and turning it into Xbasic. There's a lot of energy you never see that goes underneath the covers to make these genies to work really well for you. So with that, I hope that, I know that kind of killed it. But if you go to our fabulous, phenomenal Alpha documentation system that is managed by Sarah, you'll see that there is a lot of web API documentation in here, both on the underlying commands, but also, talking about different ways to connect to APIs, Salesforce, etc. And there's a lot of good content on there. And we're adding more as we go along as the API stuff matures.
Excellent. Someone had just mentioned SoapUI, which is a service. And are you at all familiar with that? Have you used it?
I have used it. Actually, okay. Just to let you know, is Alpha has built into it, if I'm back in the development environment, hopefully it's caught up, and there's an area called Web Services. And if I click the new button in the newer release, if you have an older release, it may look a little differently. You have two different things you can do. You can create a definition to consume the SOAP web service, or you can create a new definition to create a REST service. So this is about creating a REST service. We also have the ability, and we're going to show in the future, where you can take a Swagger definition, which is a sort of, think of it as a specification for a web service, and we'll auto create code for you to do that. And we're going to show that as in the future on how to do that. SOAP is been around longer than REST. SOAP is, it uses XML as the data. There are still a lot of systems that use the SOAP interface, although most of them are slowly but surely moving over onto REST, because it's there's a lot of performance improvements and the world is going to REST versus SOAP. But a lot of historical data is in SOAP services, a lot of, like for instance, I think like Service Master and some of these very Service Bench and other very systems that have been around a long time that connect to mainframes and do EDI, they published everything as SOAP. But you can click on here and we have a automated system that you can put in what's called a WSDL, which is sort of like a Swagger definition for SOAP that tells what that SOAP service does, and we'll write an interface to that and give you example code from there. So if you're trying to do SOAP stuff, then you can go to here. We'll probably do a demonstration of this, but honestly, we're going to spend more time on REST because REST is where it's at. REST is where the industry is going, and most of the modern systems out there. But that's not to say we won't support you on your SOAP adventures within there. And I don't know of any SOAP on a rope capability within Alpha, but I'm sure this is something similar to that. So
how long were you waiting for that joke?
Months. When I started out, I go, how can I work on a rope? And even that, it really wasn't good. I would say guess what, everybody? See, I screwed it up. I should have planned this. I should have gone like this. Hey, if you're interested in SOAP, SOAP is great, but Alpha's ability to use SOAP is like soap on a rope. That's how we take it up that notch.
Oh man, that's great.
I know. Sorry, everybody. I apologize. That was probably rude, mean. All of a sudden, it's why you can watch. All of a sudden, like 20 people dropped off. It's weird. They
did. They said, "I'm not gonna." This is actually a customer joke. I'm not watching the soap dope.
Yeah, exactly. Rope-a-dope, baby. So.
Well, we've actually come to the end of our questions here, which is wonderful. But if anyone does have further questions, send them into guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. I know we have about 90 seconds left in the webinar. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dion?
All I'm saying is that I'm having a ball. I got to tell you, the stuff, seriously, because
the API stuff, isn't it great? You're working with other people's things. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the coolest thing is that there's a huge amount of documentation. Everybody's doing everything in their power to make their API easier. As we talked about in the API economy, the easier it is for you to use your API, the better it's going to be. For instance, Stripe has an amazing API and amazing documentation that makes it child's play to create really interesting integrations for payment processing. It's like boom, boom, boom. And so what I find is that it allows you to, and you're going to see next week, I can take some very challenging problems, and with our new API capability and with Transforms API, I can transform how I attack those problems. I now take a problem and turn it into a huge advantage because of the API stuff. So stick with it. It's really fun. It's really interesting. And the other part of it that you're going to find very fascinating is that you're probably going to start by consuming a lot of web APIs that tend, using other systems and stuff like that. But after a while, you're going to go, oh my gosh, if I could create a web API for my system, then someone else with an API capability could take my system and do amazing things with it. So you get this really sort of the greater is
like collaboration,
is sum of the part. Yeah, it's really cool, and so it's very fun stuff. So we're gonna have next week's gonna be it's gonna be a blast. We hope everybody's there, and special guests and stuff. This is great. It's like a late night talk show or something.
Well, thanks again, Dion, for presenting and showing us all this API stuff. Thank you, everyone, for attending, especially those who asked questions. And if you have future questions, please send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Thanks again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday. If you want to be invited to the Transform Tuesday webinars, also just send off an email to guides at alphasoftware.com, and we will set you up. Thanks again, and take care. Bye-bye.